Hello once again everyone, Original Blood Ace back again, and here we go with the second video. Again, this is a stupid topic to discuss, and these guys have been known to be idiots before, but Polygon thinks that Disney can save Nintendo. They think that if Disney buys out Nintendo, Nintendo can be saved! Now, I'm going to let that sink in for just a second. I'm just going to let you sit there and let that soak into your brain. Hopefully you have a brain. Because if you do, you would realize this is idiotic, to say the least. Why people continue to think Nintendo is so doomed that they're going to go third party and yada 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 yada. Well, I wrote down a few notes here just to kind of go over the facts, you know, because that's what I like to deal with, is the facts. So we're going to do this company by company. We're going to talk about the big three, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft. And then, of course, right off the bat, I want to just say a little blip about Disney. So Disney was founded, they started October 16th, 1923. They've been around for 91 years. That's about 3/4 as long as Nintendo. Nintendo was founded September 23rd, 1889. They've been around for 125 years. Do you know how many businesses or companies have been around that long? I mean, you could probably say, you know, like a family-run business has been passed down from generation to generation, but I mean like a global juggernaut company. Nintendo's been around 125 years. They've seen companies come, they've seen them go, aka Atari and Sega. Except for Sega, they saved from, you know, disappearing. Anyway, Nintendo's history. They've done Hanafuda cards, they've done taxi services, they've done love hotels, video games, gambling, which kind of ties in with the Hanafuda cards with the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Nintendo's history. Nintendo had made no profit for 2 years recently. However, before these 2 years, Nintendo made pure profit for 30 straight years. That's year after year after year after year after year for 30 years. Profit, 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 profit. It was 30 years before that they had a year where they didn't make money. Nintendo's employment history, or employee history. Nintendo very, very rarely fires people. Iwata basically refuses to fire people. Nintendo's money in the bank. Nintendo had $10.5 billion in the bank just 2 years ago, which is now down to about half, down to about 5 million, or billion, not million. Now, that was because, well, I'll get to that in a second, actually, but they could have lost $257 million every freaking year and never made a penny again, and still lasted until the year 2052. Then they could have sold stocks, technology, and buildings to last till the year 2075. Next topic on Nintendo is Nintendo headquarters. I broke each company except for Disney down into the same categories here to compare them. Headquarters. Nintendo bought a new headquarters in Japan. That's where a huge, huge chunk of their money went. Half of their money in the bank they spent on building a brand new headquarters in Japan, which, of course, as we know, combines their handheld and their home console developers into one building. And the last topic for Nintendo's side is their debt. Nintendo has a small amount of debt. It's nothing, really. Nothing to be concerned about. Now let's move on to, say, Sony. Sony was founded May 7th, 1946. They've been around for 68 years. That's pretty much half as long as Nintendo has. Sony's history, they've done multiple things like TVs, DVD players, Blu-ray players, PCs, phones, Sony Pictures, you know, or Sony Films, or whatever. No, it's Sony Pictures. And then, of course, the PlayStation brand, and so forth. Sony's money history is, where was it? I lost my spot here. Sony went 10 years in a row of no profits. The PS3 alone made no profits its first 5 years. Sony's TVs got their ass raped and handed to them by Samsung. The Sony president himself at one point was even concerned about bankruptcy for Sony, and Sony had downsized and only has 3 divisions left: Sony Pictures, PlayStation brand, and I believe their TVs was their third and final one. Employee history for Sony. Sony fires 10 to 15,000 people in 2 years. I forget if it was 10 or 15,000. That's why I wrote 10 to 15, because I forget. It was one or the other. Unlike Nintendo, who refuses to pretty much refuses to fire anyone. Money in the bank. We all know Sony's been bleeding money for 10 years. They are extremely low. They're in debt. They don't have very much left in the tank. Sony headquarters. Unlike Nintendo, who bought a new headquarters, Sony sold off their North American HQ for $1.1 billion to pay off debt, and their Japanese headquarters for $1.2 billion to help pay off debt. And that wasn't enough, I should say, to pay off all their debt. That scratched the surface, but it barely made a dent in their debts. They don't own, let me just say, I'll say this and let it just sink into your head. Sony does not own a headquarters in North America or in Japan. That's right. Now, their debt is their final situation for Sony I wanted to talk about. Despite Sony selling off their headquarters to pay off debt and downsizing the company just to 3 divisions, Sony remains in a huge debt. Currently, only the PS4 console, not games, console, is making any profit for them, which is not, I repeat, not enough to support the entire Sony company. Sony's bigger than just their PlayStation brand. They used to be a global juggernaut around the world for everything, basically. So the Sony PlayStation 4 alone cannot support them. It would have to sell, even though people, like the PS4 sold phenomenally, it would have to probably sell triple the amount it did to even make a dent at supporting Sony's entire company. Now let's move on to Microsoft. Founded in April 4th, 1975, they have been around for only 39 years. Now granted, that's older than pretty much all of us. That's not even a third as long as Nintendo has been around. So you could say Microsoft is the baby of the 3. They are the youngest. It's like Nintendo is the grandparent, Sony is the parent, and Microsoft is the kid. Which is quite fitting, seeing as, Microsoft, or Xbox is played mostly by kids. Anyway, that's not the point. The history of Microsoft, of course, we all know they've done they do PCs and operating systems like Windows and phones and Xbox division and so forth. Microsoft's money history, basically they have infinite money. You don't even need to argue that. Their employee history, they have fired people from time to time, though not as much as Sony has, so they're in between Nintendo and Sony. Money in the bank. Again, like I said, with their money history, they're basically infinite. But that doesn't mean a whole lot. It means they'll never go out of business, but at the same time, well, let's just get into it. Their headquarters, of course, they have one in the USA, in the United States, and then their debt. The overall company of Microsoft, I don't believe has any debt. I could be wrong. I didn't really look into it too much. However, the Xbox division is what we're focusing on. Because always, well, since the 360, I don't remember way back with the Xbox, the original Xbox, they always end up ending the generation in the red. They never make a profit from their Xbox division in the end, but Microsoft has basically infinite money. They'll pour money and money and money and money and more money and more money and more money into the Xbox division, making, giving themselves exclusive content for 3 months early before everyone else, and third-party exclusives and that kind of stuff. But they'll never actually get in the black. Which, as a comment to my last video, even if Xbox One beats Wii U in the end, it sells more this generation, that really doesn't mean much. They sold more, but they'll still end up in the red. Nintendo will sell less, but still get a profit, since Nintendo is getting a profit now. So let's get back to the original point here, which was Polygon thinks that Disney can save Nintendo. So you're going to tell me that Disney, a company that's been around for 91 years, 3/4 as long as Nintendo, is going to save Nintendo? A company who made profits for 30 years, then lost money for 2 years, and now is back in the profit business, or in the profit margin? I don't think so. Don't know what you're frickin' talking about, idiots. If anything, Disney could save Sony. Hell, a lot of companies could save Sony. Sony's the one in trouble. Of course, they would never save Microsoft, because Microsoft is, you know, infinite money. They don't need to be saved. They need to leave, but they don't need to be saved. So people need to stop saying that Nintendo needs to be saved, they need to go third party, they're going to go bankrupt. They do not know what the hell they are freaking talking about. Not that Nintendo would even say yes, because at one point in the GameCube days, here's a fun fact, Microsoft tried to buy Nintendo. You know what Nintendo did? I think I said this in a video before, but Nintendo laughed at Microsoft, laughed at them in the face, and said, "Oh, you're serious? No thanks, we don't need money." I'm paraphrasing, that's pretty close to what they said. I forget their exact words, but it was something along the lines of, "Haha, oh, you're serious, we don't need money." And Iwata himself has said that Nintendo will take their games with them to the grave, so don't expect to see them anywhere but Nintendo. And another thing I want to say is, why would Disney buy a video game brand? What do they gain? I mean, they have made, you know, Mickey Mouse games and whatnot, but why would they buy any of the big three? They wouldn't, you know, try and buy Microsoft because they don't have any experience with, you know, PCs and operating systems and whatever. They wouldn't try and buy Sony because they don't have any experience making TVs and DVD players and all that stuff. And as for Nintendo, other than making a Mickey Mouse game every now and again, you know, those Disney Pixar games and whatever, they have next to no experience in video games. So that would make no logical sense, now would it? Also, wouldn't Disney buying Nintendo increase the amount of people saying, Nintendo's for kids? Since so many people say, oh, Disney's for kids, you don't see Disney games selling like blockbuster amounts on Xbox or PlayStation, do you? They sell decently on Nintendo systems, and I think they sell okay on the other ones. My point is, Nintendo and Disney may both be somewhat family-friendly, but that's their only similarity. Why on earth would Disney buying Nintendo be a good thing? People who write these articles are those who want Nintendo games on other consoles. Because if Disney bought it, since Disney puts their games on everything, they would tell Nintendo to put their games on other people's consoles, and we wouldn't have Nintendo consoles anymore. They're weak, you know, weak, underrated consoles, blah, blah, blah. I get so annoyed with these articles that I read every once in a while where people think that Nintendo ever needs to be saved. I mean, Nintendo single-handedly saved the gaming industry. There was the crash. It killed Atari. It 99% killed Sega. Nintendo survived. Why? Because they stick to themselves. They kind of go off in the corner and do their own thing. They don't follow the trend. They don't follow everyone else when they're heading towards a dead end or, you know, a cliff to fly off of. They saved Sega from being completely erased from history. Hence why Sega and Nintendo get along get along well these days, I should say. Then Nintendo rebuilt the gaming industry from the ground up, basically with, well, Miyamoto, I should say, basically did that with Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong and Star Fox and all that stuff, but you think that Nintendo needs to be saved when they themselves are the ones that save everyone? They saved Bayonetta 2, didn't they? Nintendo's fine. They've always been fine. They went 2 years without profits, but that was next to no effect on Nintendo, to be honest. The 3DS has always been selling well. I mean, it had its first rough launch, and then it, you know, after its first rough launch, it just blew up. The 3DS, though, is a printing machine. I can't even speak. Printing machine. The Wii U is now past the rough spot. It's now no longer taking a loss. Now Nintendo's making a profit on Wii U's. It's not a lot, but they're still making a profit. And then let's include Nintendo's newest things, the Amiibos. If you really think Nintendo's not going to rake in big bucks from Amiibos, then you're delusional. Especially if they do more Pokemon ones. Pokemon fanatics are going to go bananas. And especially if they do limited edition ones, people are going to snag them up instantly. And then there's Nintendo's quality of life thing, which we know something about it, which is that sleep helper. And that's really an untapped territory for Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, even though Microsoft seems to be going in that same direction. However, that's no surprise. Microsoft's always keeping an eye on Nintendo. Nintendo's like kind of like the brainiac kid in class, you know, who people are like, man, that guy's smart over there, but he's an odd one. You never know what he's going to do next, so everyone in the classroom keeps their eyes on him. And then when he, you know, aces the test or whatever, everyone tries to copy his answers. But, anyway, I've babbled on and on long enough in this video. The point is, Disney and Nintendo do not mix. Why would Disney even try to buy Nintendo? I don't think they would. Even if they wanted to, Nintendo would simply say, no thank you. It wasn't that long ago when Nintendo bought back a lot of their own shares just to kind of, you know, reinforce their own company with themselves. So, anyway, I'm Original Blood Ace, as always. You know the deal, you know the drill. Stay tuned, more videos coming soon, as always.